K. Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org.
Well, hello, Edwin. This is Dennis Thomas. I'm located in Marine City, Michigan. This is kind of a unique area. It's actually one of the resort areas of Michigan. We're located right on the St. Clair River, which has the distinction of being a blue water river. Most rivers are muddy and they're kind of brownish in color, but the St. Clair River actually is very blue. It separates the state of Michigan from Canada, and the river runs from north side, which is Lake Huron, down to Lake St. Clair, and then down to Detroit and to Lake Erie. So it's a very unique and special area. I'm committed personally to using technology to educate people, for teaching them readiness skills to get into business, but also using it to capture the cognitive knowledge of organizations and transferring that knowledge to knowledge workers. I'm the CEO of IQxCloud, which is a cognitive software development company. The last book that I read that I found really interesting was Real Teams Win, and it's by Ted Stedding, and he's out of Silicon Valley. And it's all about what does it take to put a real team together to have a master mind to create a technology or create any kind of a business and make it successful. The topics that really interest me are cognitive technologies and how they're different from data and digital technologies and also AI technologies. A lot of that resulted and came about because of my business relationship with a fellow by the name of Richard L. Ballard. And Ballard is a Berkeley experimental physicist. He was the 110 employee with Apple Computer. So it was an extraordinary opportunity for me to work with him. So that pretty much summarizes who I am and what I'm doing.
You talk about technology, but we're basically talking about computer technology. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking more than just term recognition or just keyword search? I mean, we're beyond that. We're way beyond that.
That's correct. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Well, explain how and why. Where did we go and how did we get here?
You know, there have been many generations of technology that have occurred. And of course, in the 90s is when databases and process modeling became very important. And KM actually came into being in the mid 90s in a very large way. When in 2000s, Tim Berners-Lee and his group, a W3C consortium, they came up with the idea of XML and extensible language and a new technology called triples. At that time, the whole idea of capturing knowledge and representing knowledge became foremost in the technologists' minds. And then it evolved into the next level where we had like conceptual graphs. That's kind of what a lot of technologies are doing right now. And then we're evolving into advanced AI technologies.
What's conceptual graphs? Can you explain to me what that is?
This is part of the difference between us and those technologies. A conceptual graph basically uses terms. Let's say you have the city called Washington, D.C. And then a conceptual graph, well, what's related to Washington, D.C.? So there would be a line coming down with that, and maybe it'll say labeled belongs to, and then it'll say United States of America. So the conceptual graph is you have a city, and then it says belongs to, and then you have the United States of America.
Just in terminology speak, is that would be an interpretation of an ontology?
It is.
We're actually doing is making a better user interface, I would think, when you can start to see connections and the why and what and how things are related.
That's true, but the conceptual graphs and so they're basically a back-end technology.
Hmm.
So as a back-end technology, it's not something that a person normally is going to see.
Oh,
Usually what they'll do, and this is probably the part of the complexity of common technology or regular data technology, is they have taxonomies, and then those taxonomies have to be translated, be mapped to a user taxonomy, and then that user taxonomy is translated and presented through
hmm.
a front end technology. And that front end technology is what individuals interact with.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of bridges connecting all this.
There are many bridges connecting it.
So, depending on who your gatekeeper is at the toll booth, you may not get all the data. Or there's a good opportunity something went awry and went to the wrong place. How do you map all this stuff and keep it straight?
Well, number one, it's very complex. It requires highly skilled people to do it, and then a lot of testing to do it. And there's a huge amount of cost.
Okay.
There are tens of billions of dollars that have been put into developing this technology and trying to make it work. For example, project managers with the DoD or with the government, and they had projects, and it maybe took them 2 years to do that. And what they came out with was like a room full of banker boxes, and that's it. That ended there. Actually, most of these technologies, up to 65% of them or more, actually fail. And so that's the problem with the
Wow.
technology. It's too
Wow.
complex.
We make the leap, I'll say, from ontological connections to a more sophisticated methodology in which machine learning takes a new spin. The machine learning advance, and how long has that been in play? Maybe 20 years, machine learning, or is it
Well,
longer
probably
than that?
that long, but really intensely since 2010.
What was the switch point in 2010?
So in 2010, in particular, AI took a major jump, and part of the major jump is neural networks. And it's a technology, it's an older technology, but as technology advances, older technologies get new life and are reapplied. And in this case, neural networks, what they're designed to do is they sit between an application and the back end of a technology, a server. And what they do is they capture the terminology that's being used through that application, whatever it may be. It also identifies the patterns of thought. And it turns out that people think in terms of patterns of thought, but data patterns of thought are different from the cognitive human patterns of thought. But general technology doesn't recognize that. And so what happens with the neural networks is then all of a sudden they started building the new things that are now called large language models, for example, Chat GPT.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have this massive stores of all of these phrases that are used across all industries and all nations, wherever it may be. Massive amounts of these phrases, language phrases, and they call patterns of thought, and then all of this different terminology. And then they piece the technology, the Chat GPT structures, puts this all together.
Mm-hmm.
And that process is called generative AI. So it's a generative AI process of putting all of this data together and then spitting out the answer to the question, whatever the answers may be. Chat GPT actually is an incredibly honest technology, and it'll tell you what its limitations or faults are if you ask for them. And there are many.
Well, wow, we've covered quite a fast train of revolution and evolution of the digital space. Where does cognition start for real in software?
That is an absolute fundamental question. The thing with software, and this is my whole thing, we've developed a knowledge science. Knowledge science is knowledge equals cognition plus data, which is facts, and then information about those facts. It's a cognitive process, and almost everything that exists within the world, including what's occurring in our brain, is a cognitive process. But computers are based on logic. And logic requires self-consistency. And of course, language itself, primarily invented pretty much in India, but definitely established by Aristotle. Logic is used in language, so language is structured according to logic as well. In databases, mathematics is all about logic. And so when they structure databases and build algorithms, they require logic, and logic requires self-consistency. So therefore, any kind of a data product that's created has to operate according to machine logic, and it requires self-consistency, and it'll always look for the self-consistent answer. Computers are diametrically opposed to humans. Humans are forced to operate the way the technologies demand that they interact with the technology, whereas cognitive technologies are human-oriented and they work the way that people naturally think, making them a proper and acceptable way for humans to learn. And that's what our technology is designed to do.
Merriam-Webster defines logic as a science that deals with the principles and criteria of validity of inference and demonstration, the science of the formal principles of reasoning. As we all know, not everybody reasons the same way across the human spectrum. How do you protect reasoning from bias?
I think a more fundamental question at this point, what is the difference between machine logic and human cognitive thinking?
Okay.
All
right, let's go down that road.
The difference between human cognitive thinking and computers is that cognitive thinking, rational thinking, basically is highly imaginative. As human beings, we're very goal-oriented because our brains are constantly asking questions. Where are we? Is there a threat in this environment? What does this situation mean to me? Are there values to the situation with me? And so the human cognitive rational thinking is all about understanding situations and circumstances. Data systems are all about trying to represent situations and circumstances, but they can't really do it because it's all logic based. How does a human being think? The human being thinks in terms of common patterns of thought, and this occurs across all people, regardless of nationality, language, or culture. And how do we think? We think in terms of compositions. Composition is an and this construction. So when we walk into Best Buy and we look around, what we see is a composition of departments. You could have the TV department, the appliance department, the cell phone department, computer department, TV department. When we go back and talk to the salesperson, then we ask them a question. And let's say, well, what kind of TVs do you have? They automatically go into a taxonomic mode. They think in terms of taxonomies. That's where you have these linear structures, and it's an and or structure. So we have this kind of TV, that kind of TV. And it goes all the way through those kind of thought patterns, like a sequence. Well, how do I do this? When you ask a how question, automatically you're into a sequence pattern of thought. And this is a cognitive pattern thought that exists across all nations and all people. So those are common patterns of thought, and that's what our technology is designed to represent.
And it sounds like a whirlwind of continual change as advances happen all across the spectrum. And I can't imagine what it's like trying to just keep up in the world of software development. As you are a proponent and a longtime KMer, can you define for me what knowledge management is?
Well, knowledge management is the art and science of identifying where the knowledge exists within an organization and how it flows through that organization and how to capture that knowledge and present it to represent that knowledge to end users. And I'll give you a classic example. And this is a major trend that's taking place right now within industry. And I'm in Michigan, and we have lots of manufacturing companies here. and there's a major new wave taking place within the industry. The problem is they have all of the end-to-end business procedures or end-to-end business processes organized within ERP systems, enterprise resource management systems. It's the back end of technology. They're all hidden in black boxes, so nobody can see that, but the machine works with these end-to-end business processes. So the trend right now is, how do you get these end-to-end business processes, how do you represent them within a technology, a knowledge technology, a KM technology, so that end users can actually see them and understand what's going on and be able to connect the dots? And that is what the KM role is right now.
I appreciate your time and your expertise today. It was a very interesting journey in the digital world.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Have a good day.
Thank you, Dennis, and
Bye.
thanks for being here. You have just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org.